So in today's growth workshop, what I want to talk about is how to calculate whether your advertising budget is working. So many business owners throw a lot of money at advertising and just kind of hope it works. Kind of think about it like throwing spaghetti at the wall, and at the end of the day they don't really know what works and what doesn't. So let's go through a formula so you can calculate that ROI, or return on investment, for your advertising dollars. Hi, I'm Danette Grau Kohrs. I am the founder and managing partner of Trinity Strategic Growth Solutions and the co-developer of a program called Build It to Grow. I'm also a growthologist, which basically means I am passionate about and I love studying the science of business growth. So be sure to stick around to the end of this video because I'm going to share with you some of the free business growth tools that we make available and tell you how you can take advantage of those. So what I want to do is start by writing up the formula and the metrics that you need in order to be able to calculate this. In the beginning, if this is the first time that you've really done this, you're going to estimate, and that's okay. But you're going to learn some key metrics, and we talk a ton about key metrics in our third module in the Build It to Grow program because they're so important to your overall growth and your overall profitability. But over time, you can start keeping track of these and have some more consistent and accurate numbers, which is going to give you a more accurate return on investment number as well. But as we go through this, it'll make a little bit more sense. So let me go ahead and write this formula up. There's two parts to it. The first part we're going to do is really calculate what your total client value is on an annual basis. And then the second thing we're going to do then is look at the expense of your advertising. And we can look at it as your entire advertising budget for the entire year on all the different things you do advertising on. I call that tactics, the different tactics you're doing, whether it's a radio commercial, whether it is a billboard, an ad, even a membership to a local business club, for example, or business group. If you are working B2B or business to business, that may be considered part of your advertising budget, and it should be. But I'm going to do for this example one tactic, and we'll look at that. But it's a good idea to do your overall advertising just to make sure you're getting a return on your advertising as a whole, but you don't want to stop there ever. You really want to look at individual tactics because you will find that there's going to be one that's really bad. And it's kind of like looking at your portfolio for your stocks. You may have one that's really bad. You want to unload that because it's bringing down your returns overall and your success. And your advertising is very much like that too. If you're growing, you're like, my advertising's working. You can have one advertising tactic that's sucking the life out of your budget. Remove that and your profitability will go up immediately. Or you can reinvest that money into something else that works better. And that's ultimately what you probably want to do. But let's go ahead and get started. So the first part of this formula, like I said before, it was to calculate your total client value. And so we're going to start by looking at and understanding what your annual revenue is for each client that you have, on average again, because it's going to vary, of course. And then we're going to look at and multiply that by, and I'm going to kind of put these in parentheses because it's a little bit of a formula in and of itself, but it's referrals that you generate on average per each of your clients, okay? So we're going to look at that as well. And then we're going to multiply that number by the total number of years of business that you get from each of your clients. How long do they stick around? How long are they doing business with you? All right. And those three variables, when multiplied together, is going to give you your total value for your clients. Okay. So that's your total client value. That is super important because we need that number ultimately to now calculate the return on investment, the ROI of your advertising budget. All right, so we're going to look at the annual advertising budget amount. All right, and then we're going to divide that by the client value that we just calculated here. All right, makes sense? So let's go ahead and jump through and let's pick an example, something simple and easy to understand. And I think maybe using, let's say, a dry cleaning business, right? So how much does each client who comes into your dry cleaner with how much are they generating for you annually in revenue? How many referrals on average are you getting from your clients? And then how many years of business? All right, so let's say, for example, you're bringing $50 every time someone brings in their clothes to be cleaned, it's $50 for easy math. And let's say they come in on average 10 times a year, right? So we're going to look at $50 times 10 visits a year, because we get looking at the annual, right? So that's going to be $500. That's their annual gross revenue value to your business is $500 a year. Now, how many referrals are you getting? A lot of times businesses aren't actively tracking that. So that's something you want to start doing. Just when you ask them, how'd you hear about us? One, is it my particular advertising that we're going to calculate this on? In this case, we're going to say it's a billboard. Is it a billboard or was it a referral? So let's say I told my neighbor, hey, this is where we get our dry cleaning done. They've got great service. They're prompt. They never lose any of my clothing. So I recommend them. They just moved in. They start coming up there. They didn't see your billboard, but they got a referral. So you want to say, hey, how'd you hear about us? Referral. So let's say we have 400 customers total. And this may not work out when we do total number of like 500 a year times 400 to support a dry cleaning business. I get that. But for easy math, which I try to like to do when we're going through these exercises, just so the numbers kind of click easily. Let's say for 400 active clients that your business has annually, you're generating 40 referrals from them every year. 40 times people will come in a year and say, oh, I was referred by, so-and-so, or I just was referred by my neighbor. If you can know who the client was referred by, the new client, then that's even better. But let's say I've got 400 clients, I'm bringing in 40 referrals, that equals basically a 10% or 0.10 referrals per every one of your clients. Because you didn't get 400 referrals, every single client didn't refer you someone. You got 0.10 per client is referring you someone, all right? So that's what we're gonna put in here, but we can't just multiply it by 0.1, because that's gonna take my 500 down very, very low. So I have to add 1 to this number, and so that's something that's important to keep in mind, because that 1 allows me to keep my original 500 in the formula. So now I'm gonna do 1 plus 0.1, right, which is going to be 1.1 is basically what I'm multiplying that by. And again, just to stress this a little more, the 1 counts the original client. If you don't have that in there, you're discounting them, you're removing them from the formula. So that's why we're adding the 1. And then the 0.10 is giving you the calculation for the referral, all right? So it's gonna make sense in just a second. And then the last one is the years in business. So let's say on average, you keep track of how long a client stays with you, right? If they're a referral, they may stay around for, I'm sorry, not a referral. If they are in a dry cleaning business, they may stick around for 4 or 5 years. I'm gonna use 10, I'm gonna use 5. I'm gonna use 5 years for this formula. Typically, I'm thinking that people move, on average, they say in the real estate industry, about once every 7 years. So they could be around for 10 years, they could be around for 20 years, but on average, let's say 5. I think that's a good number. So if I take 500 and I multiply that by 1.1, and then I multiply that by 5, I think the number comes out to $2,750. Right? That is your total value of your client for the lead that was generated and converted, all right? So here, it's not 500 times 5, that would be 2,500, right? It's a little bit higher. Why is it a little bit higher? Because I've added this 0.1, this 10% referral rate in. Because if I have Mrs. Jones come in and she's generating for me 500 for 5 years, $2,500, that's her lifetime value to me. And then she brings in her friend Jenny, right? Now Jenny is worth 500 also, but not everyone's bringing in Jenny. So hopefully that makes sense. So now this is my number over here. I'm just going to transplant that into this part of the equation, 2,750. All right, so next variable, once we have this, we can pop it in. It's real simple to do the rest of this. This is kind of the part that starts. And again, estimate these numbers if this is the first time you're going through it, but then start to get aware of these metrics so that you can get stronger numbers in. Maybe this is 4 years, that's going to affect this quite a bit. Maybe this is 7 years, that's going to affect this quite a bit. And you're going to see then how it'll affect your numbers down here. So start taking care of these metrics because it helps. you invest better and get better returns. So annual advertising budget. Again, you can look at your total advertising expenditures, or we can look at it per what I call tactic. All right, and a tactic is one individual effort that you're making. So in this case, I think I said let's use a billboard, right? So let's assume your billboard advertising expense is $200 a month times 12. Now I picked 200 because I know that's not a lot for a billboard, but I know that there are some business groups now, let's say Chamber of Commerce, that will work with a billboard advertising company, and they will purchase a billboard, especially with the digital billboards that are so available now. And different members of that chamber can rent at a smaller piece a certain amount of time on the billboard. So that's really a popular thing that's starting to really become available. So let's say it's 200 a month times 12 months. That's going to be, let's say, $2,400 a year. That's the annual cost for having that billboard, right? And now I'm going to divide that by 2,750, which is my client value from the leads that are being generated. And that basically comes down to 87.873, all right? So that is the number of leads that needs to be generated that are converting. All right, so this is the number of sales really that you need. I'm going to write that up too, sales that convert. All right, so if you do that math backwards, which I always like to do to make sure everything kind of shelled out correctly, you take 0.873, right, and you multiply that by the client value, which is 2,750. And that should equal 2,400, right? So that says, okay, if I convert and I sell 0.87 leads a year, I will generate, and they produce this for me, assuming that, that all these numbers come out, then I'm going to break even. Now, the next thing to take into consideration is that you don't really want to break even on your advertising. You want some sort of a return. You want it to be a positive return on investment. So maybe I want to get a 10% return on that. But the first thing I need to understand is how many leads do I need in order to close that many? So that's the next metric I would encourage you to try to get an idea on. For every lead that you get, how many do you convert? Now, in a dry cleaning situation, if they walk in the door, they're a converted lead, right? They don't usually walk in. You may have a little bit that say, hey, how soon can I get this back, right? If I bring in a dress that I need tomorrow to wear to a wedding, will I have it back by 9 a.m.? And you say yes or no. You might lose the sale there because you can't get it back in time. But most of the time, if they walk in the door, they're a converted customer. But not always. In a lot of businesses, there is a sales process that you have to go through in order to sell them. Maybe you're doing carpet cleaning, for example, and they get a bid and you go out and meet with them to look at their home and decide what it's going to cost, and so then they don't hire you. So you need to take that into consideration. So let's say you have a 20% conversion rate. So for every 400 leads that you generate, well, in this case, let's say it's a 0.87. For that number of leads, I only have a 20% close rate. So I'm going to divide that number by 20. And when I do that, that tells me that I need just over 4, maybe let's say 4.5 to round up. I need 4.5 leads. Just leads that come from this billboard every year in order to break even, because I'm going to generate that much money from them. All right, over the life of the value, the lifetime value, right? This is the annual revenue. This is the lifetime value of them, right? So I need 4.5 leads. And that is just to break even, because I'm only going to close 20% of them. And then if I close 20% of 4.5, it gives me just under 1. All right. So the next one that I was mentioning before was, what if I would like to have a 10% return on my money? And that's the next thing I would encourage you to take into consideration. So if I am spending $2,400 a year and I want a 10% return, 10% of that equals $240, right? And 240 added to that then would be $2,640. That's what I want here as my goal, is my goal for a 10% return on the invested. So I simply do the same thing. I take this 2640 and I divide it by my total lifetime value of the client, which is 2,750, right? And that tells me how many leads that I need to sell, right? Which is just about 1. I think it's just 0.96, but let's say it's 1, right? I need 1 in order to get that return. And I simply do the same thing. I'm going to divide that 1 by 20%, if that's what my conversion ratio is. I'm going to write that up here just so that it's easy to remember. Right? And if I take that number and divide it by 20%, if I take 0.96 or 1 for all practical purposes, and I divide it by 20%, that basically tells me, I think, that I'm going to need to get 5 leads. It's not much higher than this because the number here isn't that much higher, but it's still a little bit more. Obviously, you can't get 4.5 leads. You're going to have to get 4 or you're going to get 5. So at the end of the day, this might be moot point, but when your numbers are different and larger, you will see maybe this being 10 leads versus 20. So anyway, this is just a quick go through of a formula that you can do to look at your advertising budget, look at the cost for each tactic that you're doing to calculate what do I need to know if it's working for me, if I'm making money on it, or if I'm losing money on it. Should I redirect it? Should I drop it? Should I invest the money later? But I want you to start thinking about your advertising expenses not as a cost to your business, but as an investment, so that you know it's generating a return for you. So if you liked this video, if this was helpful to you at all, add some comments below. If you've got any questions, any ways that this has helped you make a decision where you've decided, hey, I'm going to drop this advertising or I'm going to double up on it. Maybe you do that. Maybe you have an opportunity to do the advertising even more because you feel confident that it's worth investing in more. But leave a comment before, subscribe to the channel, give us a thumbs up, share it, do what you can to kind of pay forward and help other business owners get the same information. Thanks. Hey, thanks for watching the video. If you'd like to get more information, go ahead and text GROW, or the word grow, to the number right here, and we will send you our Grow Like a Pro report. Hey, don't forget to subscribe. Click the bell right here so that you can get more tips and tricks and insider secrets on how to grow your company consistently, predictably, and profitably. Thanks.